with you tonight on In Focus. Newzroom Afrika Channel 405 reporting continues. Now, as we commemorate World Water Day, we turn our focus now to water regulations in the country and how they can be used to encourage private sector investment. The private sector investment is key considering South Africa's aging water infrastructure. Here to talk to us more on this, I'm joined by Julius Kleynhans, OUTA's Executive Manager for Social Innovation. Julius, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight on In Focus. We hear from the Minister today that dams are full considering the rains that we've been having, but the taps are dry. But he says we don't have a water crisis in the country. However, there are plans afoot at the moment to reform regulation in the water sector, particularly to increase investment in the maintenance and construction of water infrastructure and improve water quality. Why does South Africa need to change the way we regulate the water sector?
No, sadly, we are facing a water crisis, and we have been for quite some time. And, sadly, we don't have a choice but to get new ways of getting money to invest in infrastructure, as these funds have been depleted, and we've seen significant corruption under the Department of Water and Sanitation in the Nomvula Mokonyane era. So billions have been stolen. Unfortunately, the poorest of the poor are still sitting without any water. And these projects have been in the past been given the green light. We're still looking at the Lesotho Islands Phase 2 project that was supposed to give Gauteng a new water in last year already. And we are yet to see even the first brick being laid in building that infrastructure. So South Africa is in a dire state. And if we don't get private equity and engineers and companies that know what they're doing on board now, we might just see a significant problem in South Africa, especially if our economy that is stagnant and in fact declining. We need this investment, and we need water for future economic development.
Yeah. How have we been getting by all these years without private sector investment in water infrastructure?
No, I think, if you look at municipalities, obviously they charge people rates and taxes. We've seen government and treasury allocating significant amount of money every year. So we've seen that the infrastructure that's been laid some years ago, maybe 2-3 decades ago, slowly but surely being degraded. And unfortunately, we've also seen urbanization. So as communities and housing and estates and cities and towns have been developing, the same infrastructure was not maintained. So we've started seeing now how this infrastructure has been deteriorated to such an extent that it needs to be replaced. It hasn't been maintained over the years. In fact, if you go look at any municipality now whose infrastructure that is, they really budget very low margins to maintain it. I think Treasury says you need to allocate about 8% of your budget for proper maintenance, and there's very few municipalities that even reach 2%. So it is evident that it's bad planning, bad administration, bad management, and we've been very lucky to have water to such an extent. But also, I think, in the cities we've been very fortunate, but our smaller towns have started seeing water shedding and water shortages over the last decade. And not only that, now we're starting to see our cities where the water quality is not up to standard and where there's significant water interruptions. And you cannot sustain an economy like that. And it's an infringement of human rights. People need access to quality drinking water, and that's our constitutional right. And unfortunately, that resource is being depleted, and it's not managed properly, and we are seeing dire situations. If you look at the extent of pollution in our river systems by the same municipalities when it comes to sewage contamination, the concentration of pollution is getting so high that our infrastructure and our waterworks cannot clean the water properly. And we're seeing that communities are not drinking the water they have to. We've seen now recently in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, sorry, that's an old name, but where the water has been so depleted that the city actually asked the people to start boiling their drinking water, and that's just unacceptable for South Africa.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, Julius, you're saying we need to rehabilitate infrastructure, we need to build new storage, we need to improve on our reticulation and our treatment schemes. How does establishing a new agency help us address all those issues?
Look, I think the new minister is definitely a breath of fresh air, saying all the right things. But establishing a new agency doesn't mean anything because there's been so many agencies being established. We've seen the Trans-Colored and Tunnel Authority. We've seen water boards, like Rand Water and Umgeni and all these things. And a lot of these entities should fulfill some of these functions. So just establishing another agency is I think, smoke and mirrors. And if you look at the water policies and all these nice words and jargon of a new water strategy, it's all the same thing. It's really a lack of implementation from government side. But what we are excited about is with the new minister extending a hand to civil society and business to get involved, because government cannot fix the water problems in this country alone. It's been proven, and we cannot mess around with this. It's time that business and civil society and government take hands on this project and implement it. 2030 is around the corner. There's a lot of sustainable development goals that we have focused on as a country, and the only way we can achieve that is if with all hands on deck. And I truly hope and sincerely hope that there will be a bit of consistency within the Department of Water and Sanitation, as the ministers have been chopped and changed, as well as the DGs. And hopefully we'll see stability there now so that we can actually implement proper plans and monitor it accordingly. And finally, we need to start seeing the independent water regulator coming into play, because we haven't seen any officials being held to account for pollution, and our municipalities are the biggest contributors to sewage contamination in this country. And I think we're yet to see the capacity in the regulator being upgraded significantly so that we can start regulating the industry, not only with funds and the allocation of the amounts of water, but also the quality and to start curbing the pollution in our country. We owe it to our children's children to start looking after these resources.
Yeah. What's the implication then of private sector money coming in to solve largely a social need?
Yeah, it's significant. It's very important, not only through proper job creation. We've seen a lot of salary creation taking place, but we need proper jobs. People need to be able to start, being innovative. We've got such an innovative country and society, but it feels like communities and individual civil society are being marginalized because government wants to manage everything and almost control everything. And, we've seen the Artisans Project, the war on leaks, significant failure, where 15,000 artisans were supposed to be, going through an academic phase where they can be in a practical scenario and get jobs. But again, it was ambushed and there's been significant corruption in that space. We need to see civil society and business really take hands of government in an open and transparent public process where money comes in, where tenders are allocated in a transparent fashion, and where civil society and communities can actually benefit from it, not only through job creation, but actually getting sustainable jobs where they can start taking ownership of the water in their communities and maintaining the pipes and infrastructure. That should be run much more sustainably. We've seen all this money going into our municipalities' coffers every month over the last decade, but we haven't seen the infrastructure maintained properly. So we need people who are capable and who are really passionate about this kind of industry to make it work. And the only way to do that is by tapping into the professionals, getting some private equity in place, and ensuring that the contracts are not only a 5-year focused segment between political changes. We need to start seeing continuity over that. And I think that's where the public-private partnerships need to come into play. You don't want to allocate one contract to a private company for 20 or 30 years,
Right.
because then again it becomes a bit of monopoly. So this is a good opportunity for good economic growth, but also sustainability of our resources.
Julius, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. The Executive Manager for Social Innovation at OUTA, Julius Kleynhans. Continue next.